Hi everyone, and thanks again for joining us today on SportsNetworker.com. For my first interview of 2013, I'm very happy to be joined by Terry Reynolds, the Senior Director of Professional and Global Scouting. How are you today, Terry?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
Thanks again for joining us. Let's dive right in here to the first question. Joining the Reds organization in 2004 as the Director of Amateur Scouting, how were you able to climb the ladder to your current position of Senior Director of Professional and Global Scouting?
Well, over the course of a fairly long career in baseball, I've done a lot of different things. And, I think title sometimes can be a little misleading. And for me, the most important job in any organization really is the Director of Amateur Scouting job, because those are the guys that really are the backbone of any organization, and how your drafts go and how your signings go are exactly where your organization ends up. So I really don't put any more emphasis on a title that I have now than I did as Director of Amateur Scouting. But to answer your question, I got there, I think, because I've been a coordinator of pro scouting before with the Dodgers, done a lot of international scouting with the Dodgers in my prior career with them. And so this was just kind of a natural next step here with the Reds into a position that I had some experience with before.
What are some of the scouting functions that you yourself are directly responsible for?
Well, currently our pro staff takes care of all the professional teams that are in affiliated baseball. So we'll see, from Class A on up, we'll try to see every player that plays, and in some cases we'll probably try to get 2 looks. My personal job that goes with the title is I do the National League Central through AA, so I see all the clubs of, say, the Cubs, the Pirates, and I see all their clubs through AA. I see all the Reds clubs throughout the whole organization, right through to the Dominican Summer League. And then in the past couple of years, at least 2 of the last 3, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do some advanced scouting too. So we have an administrator here. His name is Nick Kroll. Unfortunately for me, Nick handles most of the paperwork, the scheduling, all those type of things for our professional scouts. He does the bulk of the heavy lifting. And fortunately for me, I get to do a lot of actually go out and scout and do the things I prefer to do. So it's a nice setup, and we have good, experienced pro scouts, which makes this job a lot easier.
The Reds have a very young nucleus of talented players. Would you attribute that more to the great scouting you guys have done, or the smart front office decisions not to trade those young players?
Well, I think it's really a combination. First off, you got to get the players. So I would say the major guys to be congratulated would be the amateur scouts and the drafts and the guys that have been signed internationally that have put us in a position where we do finally have some depth in the minor league system. And then, the general manager, in particular, Walt, has been astute in when he has had to trade players, young players, which you always hate to do, but sometimes you have to fill a need. And, especially with the guys that we've gotten, most recently Matt Latos, who's the top of the rotation pitcher, sometimes you just can't draft those guys based on where you're picking in a draft. So fortunately, we did have some inventory that we could move. We did get a guy we need, and I think the 2 work hand in hand. You have to have an amateur staff that really understands what your needs are, get the best player out of each draft that you can get, and then have a front office staff that understands these are very valuable commodities, and if you're going to move them, you better get a very serious need. And I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that over the last few years.
On a more personal level, what has it been like to travel a great deal while also having a daughter who plays Division I basketball and a son who plays D1 baseball?
Actually, it's been easier since they got to the college level. The hard part is traveling a lot when your kids are small. Saying goodbye to them when you leave for spring training for 6 weeks, or, you miss a lot of what they do. On the basketball, my daughter, fortunately, I was home a lot of the winters, so I probably got to see a lot more of her games growing up than I did my son's baseball games because of the seasons. But they've both been very understanding. They both handled it well, probably better than I did. And fortunately, they got they got opportunities to play games they really enjoy, and at schools they really like. So overall, it's worked out good. In retrospect, you'd always like to be home more and be able to see them more, but that's just one of the parts of the job that you have to deal with.
What would you say was the most powerful and influential decision that you've made throughout your career?
I'm not sure how powerful it was, but back in the Dodger days, before anybody had really signed any players from Korea, we made a decision that we wanted to sign Chan-Ho Park. And at that time, there was a lot of logistics involved, a lot of first-time things involved to try to do that, trying to track him, whether it be in the States or in Korea or wherever we were able to see him, break down the language barrier, the cultural barrier, then actually get him signed and actually find out, more about him after that, what kind of person he was, how much he wanted to play, how bright he was. That was probably as challenging and as most fun. And ultimately, it was very, very satisfying. So I'm not sure in the overall scheme of things how big that is, but professionally, it was a fun thing for me.
And the last one we have to you today, Terry, is as one of the most influential people in the Reds organization, what advice would you give to those aspiring to break into the business of sports?
Well, I think it's gotten harder. I would say that it's going to take time. You're going to have to be willing to work for probably not a whole lot of money to begin with, but go do it. I mean, once you get there, once you get your foot in the door, then it's up to you to do things that people notice, to work hard, to contribute, to not be afraid to talk. But if you have something you really want to do, follow that dream, and don't let the fact that it is a hard nut to crack stop you from trying to do it.
Thanks very much, Terry. And for Sports Networker, I'm Lucas Biebelberg. Have a great day.
Thanks, Lucas.